TDI or
TDI,
maybe
TDI
if I
rules.
down on the street, if I can make a riff this cool, I will be fucking so cool if I could do that, you know. And you're always striving.
Well, that's where
Me
I stole
personally,
the
yeah.
Patsy beat from. Is down on the street, you know.
Yeah, you came up with that beat and then you sent it to me and was like, hey. I got this beat and I'm like, cool. And then I came up with a riff at work with my bass and just recorded it just through my phone.
And it was one of the things we kept throughout, and it was influenced. I have to admit, a lot of the Stooges is. I just wanted to be like the Stooges, basically.
Yeah.
Or at least play like it, and then like the Stooges, the Patsy.
Yeah. It all works together.
Not so subtle.
That's our influences for Dangerous Days. Then you get to Dirt. Dangerous
Dirt.
Days, yeah.
I'm sure that you could buy. Can you buy an album?
You can get a Dangerous Days record.
Yeah, it's on
along
iTunes.
with the Stooges record. It would be pretty cool.
Check it out.
Sponsored by Dangerous Days.
Speaking of Dirt, that's where I was playing.
Friends of the show.
Friends of the show.
Friends of the show. Friends of the show. Dangerous Days. Shout out. That's where I got Dirt from too. Mr. Clean Dirt. I mean, this one has syncopation in it and stuff.
Yeah.
This is a way cooler beat.
Man,
this song is sick.
Yeah, every one of these, when we're describing them, I'm just listening to them in my head right now. I'm like, oh my God, this is like one of the, I mean, you listen to these records and you're like, it takes you back to that moment. Because I think, again, like I always say, everybody reaches a certain record or records or a set of songs, anything at a certain point in their life. Like I really think that whenever you're young, you gravitate towards some of the greatest things like Led Zeppelin. Right, whenever you're a teenager, you hit Zeppelin, Hendrix.
Not everybody.
Exactly, and I think it's almost a rite of passage to find the greatest.
Right.
You know, the biggest influences that you hear, and then you find those little pieces in those other parts.
Yeah,
sure.
The older that you get, and then those mean more to you because you had that bedrock.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
you have that bedrock of music, and you're like, oh my God, this is like. Because whenever I was 21, I felt like this, you know, I felt this way, you know, and I felt a lot like Lust for Life, you know, whenever I hit like 21 years old, Lust for Life was the record, you know, and listening to all of these was because I was just like, oh my God, this is my life. I'm the passenger, you know what I mean? But I digress.
Yeah, that is Iggy, not the Stooges.
Yes, I digress on that part of it.
I want to stay with the original three just because I find it very satisfying, as you were talking about. Sometimes people gravitate towards a song. I said a song or an album.
Yes,
I do like the idea of an album more.
Yeah,
I want the whole thing, encompass the whole story,
Absolutely.
if you will. And so I like this because it encapsulates a 1, 2, 3, like an arc, if you will, for a band. You know, even though after this album, the one member of the band did pass away, Dave Alexander.
Yeah. Well, he created so many. So I mean, again, being the backbone of the band, I really think that
just saying
his influence was not like on the surface, but yet you can really tell.
Yeah.
That his bass influence was really there.
Even though raw power is raw as fuck, you know, raw dog in it.
Yeah.
Like the first two are just so special, and technically you could say that it's not the Stooges, but it really is because he was there in spirit, obviously.
Oh yeah. Well, when you hit 1970 along kind of at the end of this record, because this record's only 7 songs instead of 8. You hit 1970, and he's speaking a little bit about what's going on outside.
What's going on? It's a year later, 1969.
Yeah, and I mean, he kind of adds most of that stuff in there. It's kind of a more like, hey, this is 1970 instead of 69. So things are a little bit different, but they're still, again, the nerves are still raw from everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And everything, the turmoil that was going on in Vietnam was still happening, things like that. You hit Funhouse, and with Funhouse, I don't know, it really does kind of.
This is a big improv song that I like. It's just like them jamming, and I love it. And it might take a few listens to get through to you, maybe. I didn't really for me. Like, as soon as I heard it, I'm like, I want to hear that again.
Yeah, you hear it, and it's like, I got to listen to it again, just like the first record.
But usually, I let the whole album play.
In this one, too, you had the Steve Mackay playing the saxophone, which was kind of like a weird freak out, kind of a strange thing to have in such a primal kind of music, but it really fits perfectly.
Because again, they're the Stooges, man. They're doing something different at this time.
Yeah, and this one is that freak out, you know. I feel all right. I feel all right. Like I've played this for many people, and especially back in the day when I first heard it. And I remember sitting at a party one time, and we're getting through all the records, right? I'm like, I'm taking over. We're listening to the Stooges. We got to this record, and I remember people just looking around like, what the fuck? You know, by the time we got to this, they're just like, holy shit, I've had enough. I'm all right. You know, I'm cool. Yeah. But I'm just jamming. I'm like, fuck yeah, pass me that joint. You know, let's fucking hang out. This is fucking awesome.
Playing poker, like, whose hand is it?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just, it's one of those things. It takes over the room whenever you listen to one of these records. It really does.
That's a great song. Yeah, this album I find special.
Well, then it ends with L.A. Blues, you know, and that kind of on a weird note is kind of a precursor to kind of them kind of disbanding a little bit.
Well, kind of. I mean? It's long. It's longer song. They're in L.A. obviously, so it has that.
Yeah, it's really, they're kind of just like, this is it, and they feel they got a great record. You make a record, whenever you make a record, you're like, man, this is the greatest thing I've ever done, you know? And it is, you know, for anybody that makes music. Whenever you make your own record, you're like, I fucking love this. This is the greatest thing I've ever done. You know what I mean? Man. Yeah, this is something I created, you know? And, you know, they were sitting there, and then they go out and they play all these shows, and then it kind of starts fizzling, you know? Because people didn't feel, there were some people that felt the way that we do about it, but not in that same way that they did about, like, the Doors or, the Beatles.
Zeppelin Beatles are going away, and then Zeppelin's going to start coming around here.
It's more that blues-based, rock and roll style instead of this primal kind of stuff.
Like the Moody Blues and, like, Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
And, like, Syd Barrett's going to leave Pink Floyd. I'm just saying, around this time, they're making 1970, and then they're going to go around and play that live.
Yeah.
And like he talks about again in the documentary, that they kind of didn't play a lot of the other songs. They're going to play the new songs now, which a lot of bands do. I mean, that's like a thing when you make a new album, you play all the new ones.
Right.
And so they're going around playing that. But yeah, L.A. Blues, you think that really is kind of a representation of the soft...
In a weird way,
really,
they're kind of like
interesting way to look at it.
Honestly, in a weird way, the title of the song and the way that it kind of fades, that kind of is what happened. That's what happens to them after, before they get to the raw power part of it, because they're kind of they fizzle out. They really do, and you're just like, God damn, they all kind of end up going home. Where else?
Think about how much they've been playing in like 68. They record the album. They play all through 68, 69. They record another album. They're playing through 70.
And at this point, too, I mean, Iggy was in a big relationship with Nico from the Velvet Underground. I think they were even married at one point in some weird way. I mean, at least they were boyfriend and girlfriend.
Right.
And they lived together. That influence was there for him. He saw that weird art side, the Andy Warhol kind of stuff,
Well, yeah, and then...
and Warhol was a big influence on everybody at the time,
right.
He was a punk rock artist, in a way,
Well, yes.
Yeah. And
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, he was breaking barriers and really changing things up, and then doing things that they were, again, influential in a way that nobody could ever touch it.
Sure. And then you have Bowie coming around searching for artists that he wants to work with when he takes Lou Reed and makes Transformer, and didn't Iggy make the Passenger?
No, not at that point. No, because all of his German trilogy pretty much, or the German duo of records happened after Kill City and things like that.
Okay.
So, after they get done with this, Bowie, like you said, was looking for people to play with.
Yeah, because really, I know he did Transformer.
Yeah, his influence was huge at that point. Everybody wanted to work with Bowie, and if you got a chance to, do it.
Yeah.
And then picking Iggy Pop because he wanted to meet Iggy. He was like, I want to meet this dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there was a kindred spirit through the music that he saw. It was like, I love this. I really do. He felt probably the same way that we feel about it. Right. Like this is it.
Well, he's over there making records, and he's like, he has a lot of clout, you understand? I would imagine that Bowie's like, I want to do this. And they're like, okay, Mr. Bowie, can I get you something to eat? Or
you're a thin white dude.
Are you okay with the cocaine and milk and the apple that you had? You've had an apple, a pile of cocaine, and milk.
And 2 crackers.
So, and he's like, no, it's all right.
Well,
Iggy.
Yeah, Iggy was in New York at the time too, wasn't he? And then like Bowie met him.
He went back to New York.
Yeah,
I believe.
and then decided, hey, I want to do something with you. So then they ended up going back to England. Mm-hmm. And whenever they were there, they tried to put a band around Iggy, to do some stuff. I mean, he was living up there. It was almost, I don't know, just in a weird way that they were just trying to keep that same spirit that they had with him, Bowie was. But yet Iggy was like, these guys suck.
Yeah, so it sounds like someone's coming inside and being like, I want to make what you guys made, but he can't do it with the people that they gave him.
No, the Dum Dum Boys is how he refers to those guys. He really talked really bad about the Asheton brothers and Dave Alexander for a long time.
Who did?
Iggy Pop did.
Really?
I mean, he really did. He was like they were kind of Cro-Magnon kind of dudes, you know what I mean? But at the same time, he knew how special it was what they did. Because whenever they disbanded, he kind of was in that same mindset. It was like, these guys, He even make the song "The Dum Dum Boys" from the record. And he's like, hey, and he mentions every one of them, and they talk about what's happened to him. Oh, he's living with his mother. Oh, he died, alcohol. I mean, it's kind of crazy, but that's after the fact.
Yeah.
But before, I mean, he's over there and he's making this music, and he's like, this sucks. So let me call my buddy. So he calls up James Williamson, which Williamson was an old school friend of him or something like that. And it was kind of a weird dude too. In a way.
Hold on, I'm going to cut you off real quick. Is this the new bass player now?
No. Williamson is a guitar player.
Okay, because Dave in the interim here, Dave Alexander has passed away again from.
He kind of gives up.
He he didn't. He went home from the hospital when he shouldn't have, and basically passed away because of that.
Yeah,
so.
he just drank himself out.
Yeah,
he was like, I just. I mean, he just kind of gave up on it because, again, they were all kind of at the end of it. They were like,
I don't know, what it was or anything like that, but that it sounded like it could have been preventable. But
yeah, well, yeah, the way they describe it,
that
he could have stayed there, dried out a little bit, but he was like, I just want to go home and have a beer, and then he was gone. So then you have the Asheton brothers who really aren't doing anything. James Williamson comes over first, and then they still try to get some things together for Raw Power. Still not working, And then he goes, well, let me call the Ashetons. So he calls them up, and they fly him over there. Mm-hmm. So he's got pretty much the core part of the band back together. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? With Williamson on guitar, with Asheton switching over to bass, which is one hell of a bass player, guitar player, musician himself. You have those raw beats that Scott brought, and then you have Ron playing on the bass now, which Ron had that melodic sense with the bass versus the guitar. The guitar was real angular, and he had real bounce with the bass on Raw Power. And Williamson had that fucking, I don't know, it was like trebled out.
It's raw power, dude.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool that he switches over to bass because it gives it a different level instead of, I don't know.
It's still that core.
Having a guitar player that's with the core of the band, then now he's going to play bass. It feels like the right thing to do.
He's playing guitar on bass pretty much.
Yeah.
And whenever, Williamson is adding these huge riffs on top of everything, and these riffs had to have been coming,
fucking Search and Destroy, dude.
You have the Asheton brothers, which are a hell of a rhythm section together. Even if they were just guitar and drums, they could have pulled that one off pretty easily. But whenever they put Ron on bass, that creates another backbone for everything. He really does kind of tie it all together.
Yeah.
And I'll put bass players up there with a lot of really big major bands that the bass players really do kind of kick it. They really do kind of make everything just that much better to what they should have been. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people, of course, like Geezer Butler,
Geezer,
things like that. I can kind of put that in like John Paul Jones. Come on, right. I mean, there's so many bass players that if they weren't there, the groups would have never been what they were.
Agreed.
And again, I mean, it's all of them together, but
Lemmy?
At the same time,
yeah.
We were talking about Lemmy earlier with Hardware.
Yeah.
Lemmy, God, who else? The Ox. There's so many bass players.
Geezer comes to mind.
And I would almost put Ron Asheton up there at this point, with his bass playing, because he fits and he knows where everything needs to go, and he actually does fill the space in an awesome way, and without having two guitar players like a lot of bands have.
Right.
Williamson was filling that space as well. So there is. in a band, there's everybody has their own spot, but then there are those things that you need to be able to fit into. You need to be able to say, on this part, I need to back off. On this part, I need to do something
feel
else.
it.
Yeah, it has
and
to
it's
go.
the spaces to fill, I guess, is what you're kind of saying. I
yeah.
get what you're saying.
And of course, Raw Power is such a different record compared to the other ones.
It is, but it's a nice fitting end to what I was mentioning earlier, what a trilogy, I guess you'd say.
Yes.
It's so different. Sorry to cut you off.
No.